Well, thank you everyone so much for joining another Valerian Space Ventures webinar. I'm joined today with Stan Maximin.
Yep.
Uh, do you go by Stan or
Yeah,
Stan?
Stan.
Okay, Stan. Um,
Stan's
it's February 4th, and I'm really excited about this company. It's a company I had a chance to speak with um, very recently. This French-based company that's creating a brand new launch provider for France. And Europe is in quite a bit of a catch-up race, you could say, of getting more launch vehicles up. And Stan here is the gentleman who's going to be doing that. Stan, we're very excited to have you on. Thanks so much for joining.
Of course, my pleasure. Yeah, we need a lot of catching up. Fortunately, I'm not the only gentleman trying to do this because otherwise we'll be in an absolutely terrible place. I have hired a lot of intelligent people to do it for me. So,
Very
but
nice.
I'm happy to be able to lead the team. And yeah, it's a pleasure even in the most complicated moments that are, the development of a rocket.
Yeah, and maybe we could start things off with take us back to the origin, the
Yeah.
moment or insight that led you to founding Latitude, where you said, "This is the aha moment. This is the time I need to start this," and getting everything going.
It was not like a single time. It was a culmination of things, culmination of passion, of markets, and timing in general that I felt were good. Um, Basically, I've been passionate about engineering. I'm not an engineer, but I've been passionate about engineering and science, and especially rockets for a while, since I was 12, I think. I could spend hours and hours reading about rocket engines and stuff. Like, this is my passion. So, of course, I was you know, uh, well interested in those topics. Being interested in the history of rocket science, all the programs and the technology, I became more and more interested into the new, like, kind of industry. And of course, you gotta imagine it's like, I'm starting to really be convinced I need to do this my job in like 2015, 2014. And I was young. Well, in 2014, I was 15. So yeah. And 2015, for those who know, it's like SpaceX starting to become really well known, starting to reuse rockets. And you're like, yeah, it's the perfect like kind of environment to be passionate. And as I'm looking at this, I'm also looking at everything that's going on the side, which is what the whole industry is about. The satellites, especially because launchers are kind of useless alone. They're only a transportation service, they're a logistical service or product. And what matters is the payload, and the payloads were tremendously developing. And what we saw is that the new form factors of small satellites from the very small ones that planets started with, like 4 kilograms, up to now the new form factors, 50 kilograms, 100, 200 kilograms, and sometimes more, were the perfect, basically, new form factor for new companies to start businesses. And this is the bet we did, which is, it's become cheaper to build satellites, to operate them, which mean we'll see hundreds more companies develop their business throughout the world. And all of these companies are going to need to be able to launch. And when I looked at the market, basically back then, there was some actors. In 2017, Rocket Lab started launching. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty good like market positioning. At the same time, almost a lot of other people were trying to build bigger rockets, which for me, the numbers didn't make sense because when you look at the average mass per orbit, you don't need that like a ton or 2 tons. You don't really need a lot of payload because usually constellations are quite small and basically customers need to put 2 or 3 satellites uh, um, of a few tens of kilograms to a specific spot. And yeah, and we also made the bet that as more and more of these constellations would come online, they would become constrained by launch. That was before SpaceX did rideshare programs also, but rideshare programs didn't help. It's basically uh, constrained even more the customers, and because they're launching them on basically the same orbits every time, which is better than nothing. because otherwise we would not be able to launch small satellites ever. But yeah, they're constrained, and we're like, yeah, but the thing is, as everyone goes to the same orbit for 1, 2, 3 years, the fourth year, someone's gonna be like, hey, I can basically outpace and put my competitors out of business if I use other orbits and other you know mission analysis to benefit my business and my customers. And yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And now customers are looking for way more complex orbital planes to deploy their constellation and their satellites, which mean that you're not going to buy a Falcon 9 to deploy 400 kilograms, 200 kilograms into space. You're going to need a small rocket. Otherwise, you're overpaying for the service. This is pure physics. Again, you want to go from London Heathrow to Los Angeles. If there's a flight, good. But if there's only one flight from London Heathrow to Los Angeles and you want to stop in Mexico, you're kind of doomed, unfortunately. And this is what we're trying to solve. It's just a pure logistical problem. So yeah, basically that's all the thing that we thought about. And I started at school. I was kind of bored, amazingly bored. And yeah, and I worked in the US for 3 months, a bit less than 3 months. Just nothing to do with space, but I was near Cape Canaveral, and of course I went and watched a lot of rocket launches. And when I came back to France, I was like, yeah, I don't want to waste my time anymore, and I'm going to build that company. And we pivoted like 10 times in the meantime. We learned a lot, we failed a lot, but that's how it started. And of course, highly motivated by the fact that the US and the world were moving, but Europe was still basically, behind and not really willing to change anything. And
Yeah.
and we're like, yeah, well, that's a big opportunity. We have so many engineers that are talented, and nobody's offering them the kind of new ways, the freedom, the excitement of new projects, where they can have a real impact and not work on, a screw on the rocket. And I think that's why we had so much success at the beginning and even now.
Got it. Give us a little bit of information about the overview of the European ecosystem in launch capacity and capabilities,
Yeah.
and what's kind of been the lead up to where it's been at right now, and what
Mhm.
do you see as European launch capacity is evolving to be, what do they need for truly to unlock the industrial sovereignty into space?
It's an interesting question. So a bit of history. There are like a few companies that were founded quite early. Also, I may cite, Orbex. Came from Project Moonspike and then became Orbex, I think 2014 something. Fortunately for them, it's not going very well, even though they raised 120 million pounds throughout their history. That also reminds you, and that's also the US has seen this. Like you may think of Virgin Orbit, you may think of AVL that didn't go to orbit. Yeah, it reminds you that getting the funding and stuff is not enough. What really matters is, and even like launching 5 times is sometimes not enough. Look at Astra. What matters is going further, and we're not yet at even reaching orbit in Europe. So yeah, we had Orbex 2014. There was then I think it was PLD almost at the same time in Spain. So Orbex about 200 kilograms into low Earth orbits. PLD changed a lot now. It's about anywhere between 600 and a ton. Uh, I don't really know what they're officially saying, but it's a bigger launcher now. And yeah, same. These guys basically started the whole thing in Europe, so they faced a lot of challenges, and that benefited the whole industry in general. And then I would say that the second phase. I think we're part of the third, but the second phase was like Rocket Factory Augsburg and ISAR Aerospace in Germany, followed by High Impulse also. So the three German companies, and yeah, and all developing like mid-size small launchers, so or well, large-size small launchers. So basically a ton of capacity in low Earth orbit, and yeah, and I think that well, first of all, they started quite early for some of them, like 2018. We really started like 2 to 3 years after. Yes, the company was founded in 2019, but we really started and having money like 2 years after. Um, but also, I think there was a very positive background and government support. You gotta remember the history in Europe. You cannot like judge Europe or compare Europe to the US. We're not a confederation. We're not a union. Well, supposedly we are a union, but we're not. And the fact is that Germany has historically been the one who invented rockets in its modern form, unfortunately for bad reasons. And then France took the leadership for a long time. The UK also, back in the days, unfortunately stopped, which I think they're very ashamed of now. And that's very unfortunate for Europe in general. But yeah, and so when Germany, when they started, um, I think it was Germany saw it as a way to also basically say, yeah, we want to change things and we want to take the leadership in Europe, and we're going to do this by basically undercutting France because what exists and what has been existent for a few like yeah 30, 40 years now is basically Ariane, the Ariane launchers from Ariane 1 to Ariane 6 today, and Vega, the like small-ish launch vehicle also that are basically very much well, Avio is really Italy led plus big French partnership. Ariane is French led, strong German ties and European partnerships. But in general, it's a launcher that is like you can compare it to ULA. It's a political launcher. It's political launchers in general, and with all the constraints that means, but also all the positives that it means, which the funding basically. Um, so we have all of these people, and then France came a bit behind. We were the first one, I think, to we're the first to shoot in 2019, 2020. Quickly followed by a few other companies. And yeah, then also provoking a reaction from RN Group that created Maya Space to kind of be their own laboratory of new technologies and how to go faster and develop faster, which is good because they definitely have talented engineers. Um, Now, in general, what we have is right now is one company that is close to launch that already has tried launching a year ago, which is ISAR Aerospace. They are the most well-funded company in Europe. Again, the German one, and they tried to launch. As every first launch goes, it was like a failure because it did not go to orbit. But I'm sure they got a lot of data from this, which is what you want for first launch. And they're going for a second launch in March, if everything goes well. Um, it's anyone's guess who's going to be the second. It's going to be between RFA and Rocket Factory Augsburg and PLD. I would bet on RFA if they got the funding, and perhaps quickly followed by PLD. Yeah, and then we'll see. But again, as we've seen in the US, it's not a matter of who's first. It's a matter of who stays alive. And yeah, Virgin Galactic uh, was second. They're dead for multiple reasons that we can go into details, but they're dead. And they had like a billion of funding. Astra is, well, trying to get back on its feet, but yeah, same, like more than 500 million in funding, and they were basically dead. And they reached orbit multiple times. Also failed multiple times, but I mean, this is quite a feat, and I love the company. I'm admirative. We have some Astra guys at the company, and they're incredible engineers and people in general. So yeah, so what matters is not being the first. Matters is, well, keeping your cash, first of all, not running out of cash. And unfortunately, and I do not have any form of happiness about this, about what's happening to Orbex. I hope they find a solution, especially for the people. I know the CEO quite well, and he's a great person. So I wish them the best. But yeah, as Orbex showed us, existing for 10 years, 120 million pounds raised. But if you run out of cash, you run out of cash. And every company, I think, even the most successful have been close to running out of cash. That happened to us multiple times, and I touch wood that it doesn't happen again. But yeah, it's hard. And so yeah, what matters is being the last, I would say, rather than the last alive than the first to launch. Even though, of course, it's a balance between the two. But when you look at the world, there are two operating micro launchers in the world right now, which are Rocket Lab's Electron and Firefly's Alpha. So yeah, I'm not counting the Chinese, otherwise we'll all be completely doomed. But yeah, that's like despite billions invested in the field, so building launchers is hard. Um, so that's kind of the overview. That kind of makes us the last launcher trying to launch less than like 400 kilograms. We're more on the 200 to 350 kilograms range with our rocket. All the others are about a ton, so we're quite happy about this. And, nice market. Now, in terms of the market, because the second part of your question is, I'm not sure, I'm not speaking for my peers, but we're not building rockets for only Europe. I mean, I would at least be very critical of anyone's business plan if their business plan is necessitated to rely only on European payloads and institutional programs. That would be a very bad business plan, in my opinion. Not because we don't have a lot, just because it's never happened. We can see, especially in the launch sector, that launches are quite agnostic. Commercial launches are quite agnostic. And when you just, of course, don't take into account the governmental payloads and the defense payloads, basically you can, like American satellites have been launched on European launchers for a while and still are. Project Leo is being launched on Ariane 6, 18 launches they bought. Um, and and vice versa. So basically, I think every company should from the beginning think about worldwide market with a strong local base. What is for sure is that Europe will not regain. Well, Europe has not lost its sovereignty into launch. We lost it for a year between Ariane 5 and Ariane 6. Yeah, that was not bad. That was not good. But we didn't. We haven't lost it yet. We'll lose it if two things happen. First thing, um, new launchers outside of Europe become so much cheaper and efficient compared to what we have in Europe that it will be hard to justify paying that the public, like the state is paying launch 2 to 3 times more expensive. So that might, be a problem. And of course, if we stop for some reason Ariane 6, also that would be a problem. But we have our sovereignty. The real question is how do we keep our sovereignty for the next 20, 30 years? And micro launchers are not there to keep sovereignty. I mean, they're very useful for plenty of things, but let's be honest, the most important satellites for states are, for the moment, bigger satellites. It might change, and I hope it changes because there's so many stuff that are really important that the military is really looking into it. What they're important for is their future. As we say, small launcher is going to be big one day. And this is, I think, the goal of everyone. And this is what matters, is that, that the US, when they funded SpaceX to get Falcon 9, was to have another launcher and not only have ULA as an only bidder for every of its program and basically overbid everything. And this has to happen to Europe. And I think it will happen from new players. And I think this is where their strategic value is not only on the micro launchers, which are important, but if you only have micro launchers, Europe would be absolutely doomed for its sovereignty. So they need to have a big launcher in the meantime. But in the transition period, that's going to be 2030, 2035. Yeah, you need new launchers, new heavy launchers. You don't
Right.
need perhaps multiple of them, but you definitely need a new one that is incredibly competitive worldwide. Otherwise, I think we would start having talks about losing our um, like launch capability from Europe for big launch for big heavy lift launchers.
Yeah. What do you think about? launch companies think, the engine performance and getting payloads to orbit, they're all pretty much are doing that.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, how do you think about the tech differentiation and what sets you apart from other launchers? What does Latitude have that gives them the advantage to really make it and succeed?
Um, it's a subject where I'm kind of people don't like when I say this, but I'm quite convinced of this. Technology doesn't really matters, especially in rockets, because technology hasn't evolved that much in 70 years. Efficiency has, but we're talking about percent, like not 10%, like less than 10%. And manufacturing processes have improved and stuff like that. So we can make rockets cheaper and we can make them a bit more efficient. However, they are not like nobody's come with a technology that's like, hey guys, I can double the performance of your rocket. Like I have that crazy new engine. They would be the king of the world if they really invented this, but it doesn't happen. Like some people have engines that are like a few percent better, which is good. Believe me, percent, a few percent of performance. I would be glad to have this, but it doesn't make the massive difference. So it's not about technology. I think the only technology, and it doesn't really apply to small launchers, the only technology that really brought something was reusability by, of course, SpaceX. But it doesn't really apply to small launchers, and people overstate the efficiency of reusability in the business model of Falcon 9. Um, and Falcon 9 is not cheap because it's reusable only. It is cheap because they made it cheap and also reusable. But it's a double whammy. It's if you go reusable without trying to make the rocket cheap, your rocket's still going to be expensive. So you got to think about all of this. And yeah, so every rocket's different. I think there's no two same approaches. Um, there is no two rockets that have basically the same architecture, stuff like this. All of them are different. Um, from engines to electronics to tanks and everything to structures, to approaches and capacity. So yeah, for me, tech is not a big differentiator, and everyone who says this either doesn't really understand the market or what the customers is buying, or doesn't really understand the business in general. What matters in the end is the customer. It's the only like thing that matters is selling rockets. What is the customer looking at? They're looking at being able to put their payload, nothing more, nothing less, of course. So if you're too big, well, they're wasting their time. If you're too small, well, you cannot launch them. That's factor number one. Factor number two is going to be probably reliability, which anyway you get by launching more. And technology doesn't really have a huge impact. I mean, it's industrialization. It takes time and effort, and we've seen this at Astra and other companies. It's not easy to get it right. It takes a long time. Um, and they're looking for, effectiveness for emission. So basically, what's the cost? How fast can I go in orbit? And how much money do I make with you if I go with you instead of another rocket? They don't really care about anything. If I could send them to space with a catapult, they'd be very happy. Um, so yeah, they don't really care about the technology, and that's something that people are really, really, really mistaken about. Um,
Got it. Yeah.
so that's my main point. Now, to answer the second part is what we differentiates. As you know, I'm not going to answer technology because we don't really believe that it matters. We have like a lot of stuff that are unique, but we did not develop them to be like, hey, look, it's a new thing, it's unique, wow, it's incredible. Look, I'm gaining 2% efficiency on this part. Woo. And also, everyone is talking about the new technologies. Talk about propulsion. Like it's like a rocket is only propulsion. It's not the case. I'm really sorry to propulsion engineers over there. I love propulsion. It's what I love the most on the rocket. Yes, but it's just forgetting that the two-thirds of your costs and like 80% of your workforce is elsewhere in your rocket. So yeah, that's just again not understanding your business. Um, So, so what do we do is simplicity. That's our first approach is how do we make something as simple as possible? And we have an approach which is as we're not aiming for high performance, but rather simplicity and cheap. Um, we have a very simple configuration. Like our engines are simple to make them as reliable as possible, but we like use different kind of new technologies, manufacturing methods, and approaches. But basically, they're like, yeah, we just iterated on them a lot. Our turbo pump is fairly well inspired from Soviet designs in the 60s and the 70s. But we just updated them and massively improved them with the new production capabilities that exist now. But it's not the most efficient. I would say it's probably not one of the most efficient, but it works. And we developed it in under 2 years, which is very hard for turbo pumps. Um, we have very simple structures in aluminum. Most people go with carbon, which I understand. It's light, but it's also very freaking expensive. So we don't like something that's expensive. And you got to look at the rocket as a global system. And when you look at the global system and you put a performance tag and a price to every part, you start making those little choices. And I'd rather make a rocket that is way too big to what a competitor might do. Like, I'll give you an example. We have we can have the same performance as an electron rocket, but be like 10 meters higher, bigger. I mean, in size. It doesn't really matter because price doesn't increase with height. Price increases with number of parts and complexity of those parts. But if we don't change the complexity of the parts, if we reduce the complexity of those parts, um, well, we're just paying for more aluminum, and it's quite cheap. So making tanks bigger, it's very, very, very inexpensive. Putting more fuel, very inexpensive. So basically, we have an approach which is um, tons of margins. Not tons of margins. That's not what I mean. But like, it's a big rocket. It's inefficient, but it's so like it's over performance so that it does the job perfectly and so that we can keep the cost down without trying to go hunt for the gram everywhere because every time you hunt for the gram, it is going to be more expensive, damn more expensive. And yeah, but that's something we learned. At the beginning, we did not do this. At the beginning, we did very complex stuff, and we did carbon, and that sucked a lot. That's also why we have this approach. We tried a lot of stuff. Like the first from 2020 to 2022, early 23, basically the company was in full like um, R&D mode onto like what's the best configuration and the best approach we can have. Um, yeah, and then we really started with strong opinions on what we should do and what we shouldn't do that we're now doing. So yeah, so different
No,
is this lots of iterations and simple, reliable, robust design. We're building a truck.
and yeah, and maybe if you could just break it down for the audience if they don't know, can you explain the launch rocket you have, the Zephyr, and
Yeah.
how it's unique?
Uh, Again, I don't know if it's unique.
Maybe
It's
not
a
too
combination of
unique, but
multiple.
just explain
Yeah,
so they can get a good
just a
picture in their head.
it's supposed to be to be sold a lot. That's what it's supposed to be. It's not the best. It's never going to be the best rocket. Like we might be the least performant rocket on the world. We don't really care. But yeah. So Zephyr is it's a rocket that can launch. Well, first version is going to be 200 kilograms, and in the end, we were looking up to 300, 350 maximum kilograms into low Earth orbit. So up to 500 kilometers in synchronous orbit. We can launch a bit more into mid-incline or equatorial orbits. Um, so very, very small payload. It is intentional. We are targeting the basically small to mid-size constellations that, as I said, need to launch only 200 kilograms or 300 kilograms per orbital plant, and do not need like to buy 800 kilograms. And so we can beat every other competitors on these because we're cheaper and because they do not waste their money on empty things. We also plan the rocket to be built a lot of time, so 50 rockets per year, which adds another benefit. Well, two benefits. It's the first benefit is you can design your rockets better and you can start to have a lot of productivity gains as you basically plan to launch a lot of rockets. You also it also adds a massive advantage on the market, which is the fact that you can deploy constellations way faster than your competitors, and time is money in space. So the more time you save for your customers, the more money they make. That's not on the payment, like on their bill, but it's definitely something they're all looking into. They can lose like up to 400K per satellite per month not being in space. So when you look at this, you're rapidly wondering if you'd rather pay perhaps 2 million more per launch, but but gain like a year than not. So that's something. Then a rocket is a two-stage rocket, very typical. First stage, it's about I will say between 20 and 30 meters tall. There's an update, but it's not yet announced. A bit less than 2 meters wide, and seven engines on the first stage. So fully 3D printed engines because it's cheaper again. Also because you can design and iterate way faster than with other methods. Um, Everything is designed in-house, by the way, like every part of the rocket. Not everything is built in-house though, but yeah. Uh, so seven engines, fully like oh yeah, it's a LOX RP1, so it goes into our simple, fast philosophy. So RP1 being kerosene basically, and yeah, a lot of data on this. So we just decided to go with the simple one, with an average performance, but that's fine. Um, yeah, what can I say? In the second stage, it's the same, like one engine, but the same kind of design from the first stage engine, and same thing, LOX kerosene, same architecture in the second stage, and then a big fairing so that we can accommodate every kind of satellite in not only mass, but also volume, which is where most other launchers have trouble with. Uh, Satellites can be small but very, very large. Very, very small in mass, but very large in size. So, I mean, I can go into details. I don't know how much you want me to go into details. I can go into details on this.
Yeah, I got a good idea of it. I have some other questions that I want to ask. I'm really enjoying this conversation. You have some contrarian takes that make a lot of sense, really. And, you know, coming from a European launch provider, you guys have been around, over 5 years, and we've seen companies not survive, but you guys have survived. And I'm curious, you know, from starting to now, what's that journey been like? What are the milestones you hit? What are those big moments? And was there any moment where it was just a critical moment of what changed Latitude, or were there ever those moments that quietly were like, Latitude might not make it? What
Yeah.
exactly was happening that day?
Yeah, we had a lot of moments like this. I think the big memories were I have to include some, like at least the first fundraise, and I will include the second, but to answer the second part of your question, but the first fundraise, it doesn't mean anything, a fundraise. It's not a success for the business itself. It's a success for the business, but not a success for the business plan or anything. Um, uh, but that was how we started things, and we started hiring people. Um, yeah, I think we were kind of lost for what? Sorry, I just had the flu a few
Oh, no worries.
days ago. I still haven't recovered most of my voice. Um, and yeah, so we took a lot of time basically designing, but I think the most exciting was always building the first parts, testing them. Even when it was just like testing injectors with water and everything, it was very funny. I think the big first moments, which was everything, like it was we needed to do this for our investors. We needed to achieve it for the program. It was emotionally tiring and exciting at the same time. It was when we hot fired our first combustion chamber in 2022, end of 2022, 21 December, 21st December, or 22nd, I don't remember. But basically we had that rocket engine. Well, it's not a rocket engine, it's the combustion chamber, so it doesn't have the turbo pump. They didn't have yet the turbo pump. But it was the first design. It was a smaller one, fully 3D printed. It was the first the company developed, and we had the biggest trouble ever to find a zone to test them. Um, so much that well, we had a partner that was supposed to develop a test bench, and that took a while, and we decided to just close the door and say, okay, we'll do it ourselves, which has defined a lot of approach and history of Latitude after this, which is we'll do it ourselves when partners don't do their job correctly. We still have a lot of great partners that we rely on heavily, but because we can trust them. But yeah, this one we do not have any trust into, and we were right. So we just basically we needed to test the engine in June 2022. It was ready, and yeah, basically the test bench was not ready. The test 10 was not built at all. So we said, okay, basically, go to hell. We're gonna do ourselves. So we started building, and in 3 months from design to building it in our factory, we built our first test stand, and we found a zone in Saxford in the Shetlands Island in Scotland. Um, Basically the higher point of, I think it's officially the higher point of the British like territories. Um, and yeah, we went to test over there. It was a 3 months campaign that was under rain. Basically, over there, it's like there's 70 miles per hour. So I don't know how much it is in freedom units, but 70 kilometers an hour winds, crosswinds, and it's raining in your face, and it's snowing, and it's cold, and the sun like rises from like 9 to 2 p.m. and but it was a very funny experience, and we had a lot of trouble. We even burned an engine. Um, on the bench and burned the whole test bench with it. And the team stayed during Christmas and the New Year's Eve to repair an engine, modify it, and do a successful hot fire. 4 days, the 4th of January. And that was good because we had the pressure from our investors because we put that pressure on us also. I think that was the first thing that we're like, yeah, we can achieve things together. And that was a really pivotal moments for Latitude. I think that was one. Another, then we have multiple other moments where we stopped and we're like, we gotta we gotta change or we gotta evolve. I think one happened in 2022, end of 2022, same, or perhaps beginning of 2023, when we were like, basically we're going the wrong way with the design. We're trying to over optimize stuff and putting over too many margins at the same time and doing things that are too complex. And screw this. And we completely redesigned the launcher, basically in a matter of weeks. Um, and all of that, all of that has led to delays in the program. But the thing is, you got to be very careful not to start with a massive amount of technical debt which you won't be able to recover from after. And I think that happens to a lot of other competitors that went to be operational. Once you have a launcher that's on the pad, it's very, very hard if you don't have the means or the investors behind to actually modify it. So I do believe that the first launcher doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be somewhat operational in a commercial sense. And if you don't have this in terms of reliability, capacity, a little bit of cost as well, it's gonna be a world of hurt. So yeah, we changed that. We did it again over the years. Also, kind of every year, fully updated of the strategy, and which is quite risky because sometimes it leads you to take more risks or more time sometimes or more money to invest but that we know we'll know that when we launch, we'll have a market and we'll have a good product, a very good product. Um, so yeah, that was another moment. And then on the moment where we're like we're basically dead, um, the closing of our Series A, it was in June 2022. Yeah, June 2022. When we signed the papers in the 30th of June 2022, Um, Between the time we signed the papers and the time the money was on the accounts, which was about 7 days-ish later, we had we were in the negative on the bank account. So that was hard. The closing was quite hard. So that was not funny. And I think it happened to us a few other times. But since then we got a CFO that knows how to manage money, so better than me, apparently. So we're very preservative on cash, which again adds a lot of delay sometimes. You have to slow down and pick it up again. I think that's unfortunately we raised 50 million euros in equity plus a few other like 10 15 million in other grants and contracts, which is good. But we never raised enough money on when we needed it and on time. And that has, well, what made the calculus basically uh, technical changes and problems amount for about a year in delay since the beginning, since our first target, which was 2024. It was non-realistic, but still. Um, it added for a year, and the financial delay is a year and a half to 2 years delay. But again, what matters is to be there someday, not to die too soon because you're just betting everything. And yeah, we're definitely a company managed by cash. As my CFO says, cash is king, and we call him Uncle Scrooge, and I think it's very important. So, but that has led to a lot of difficult moments, and I'd like to use this platform to basically also thank our investors that are tremendous at supporting the company in even the most difficult moments. So yeah, I think it's pretty rare to have investors like this. We're very lucky to have some investors that are evergreen also, so that helps, in deep pockets, so that helps. And also trust us, and we are being very transparent to them on what happens, and they're on board because they know, because we know our customers, we know we have a very strong business case, we know that we'll be able to capture most of the market, and crush it. And yeah, no, it's also incredibly frustrating to sometimes just, stop spending cash for 3 months because you gotta you gotta close, and it takes a while to close, it. Um, and yeah, and for 3 months you're going at half speed or even worse, and that's how you sometimes waste time, and you'd rather spend that time iterating and stuff. But yeah, that's how it happens. We also evolved a lot. The culture of the company evolved a lot. The way of doing things, the technical philosophy evolved a lot. I think we are getting closer to what we want now, way closer. But it's a never going, exercise that I think will never have an end anyway. So, but we're getting better every year, and this is what matters. We've made, I think, we've gotten perhaps like 2 times more efficient in the last 6 months at developing. So we're very happy about this.
Very nice. Um, for everyone listening, whether they're on this webinar or they're listening to the recording, what's one key takeaway you hope that they remember about Latitude and why they'll be excited about Latitude's future and what they have going on?
One thing I think they need to remember is that um, at least in rockets, technology for technology doesn't really matter. In the end, you're trying to sell to customers, and these customers, well, you got to know what they want. And you don't sell your customers your engines or your perform or just like your overall performance. No, you sell them a capacity and a product or a service. Um, so be really aware of this, and also for all the engineers that might be here, like yeah, what matters now is you need to know what a business is to develop efficiently a product when you're in a company, and same goes for the investors. I think a lot of investors get pulled into, well, sometimes overconfidence or desperate or sometimes even scammy companies that are, saying, "Oh, this is revolutionary and stuff," and well, either it just doesn't really work in a science way, in a physics way, either it's just like not that big of a deal, and space, as every other um, business, I think um, disruption is not doesn't come from, well, most disruption comes from the business models and how you work out the economics. Uh, and People will hate me when I say this, but SpaceX hasn't revolutionized space transportation by doing reusable rockets. Um, they did reusable rockets because they needed it for their business model, and because otherwise it would be too hard to produce 120 first stages of Falcon 9 every year. Honestly, if they found a better way, they would have done a better way. They don't just it's business driven. And yeah, development has to be business driven. Don't start with a technological idea and then turn it into a business. We are very agnostic on technology. Like we take what we feel is the best for what we try to achieve. So that's one point. Um, and about Latitude is that um, yeah, that this is the only first step. This is only the first step. The small rocket, and yeah, small rockets are gonna go bigger. And I think on top of rockets, I told you, rockets is. I'm not trying to shoot myself in the foot, but rockets matters a lot. But they're not the only thing that matters in the space industry, and there are so many things in the intersection of rockets, satellites, data that are gonna be uh, another industrial revolution in the next few years. It already has started, and this is also our vision: how to make the global access to space, which means any company that tomorrow wants to have a space business, how can we help them, well, execute their ideas as fast as possible? And this is not just rockets. It's satellites, it's operations, it's all of that. And I think that's the future of real access to space. Launch companies are going to die if they do not evolve into access to space companies, I think.
Yeah. And people who are following Latitude, what's something they should keep their eyes out for in the next, 12 to 24 months?
Oh, a lot of funny things happening. Basically, we are building a lot of stuff right now. It's like when you go in the factory, I have the view on the factory over there, but new stuff is coming in every day. We're going to do fingers crossed, our first, well, not our first, but we hope our first that works, full integrated rocket engine test. So with the turbo pump and everything. So that's going to be very exciting. That should happen in the next few days. And turbo pump works well, combustion chamber works well, but when you put the two of them together, well, it tends to have a few funny things that happen. Um, also, also we have well, we're currently building the second stage of the rocket. First stage is gonna be next. We're gonna test all of them. We have our own test zone, as I told you. We do things ourselves now. And yeah, we're gonna show a lot of things, uh, technical things and things that are very visual, I hope. We also had a lot of and still have a lot of commercial traction, so this is very exciting. And I really like in the next 24 months, we need to launch. And when we launch, we need to execute for our customers. We already have contracts, so we need to execute, and that's going to be exciting as well. So, yeah.
Very nice. Well, Stan, this has been an incredible conversation. I'd like to thank you so much for being so open and giving us so much information. Yeah, this one really had me thinking on a lot of things, and I think what you guys are doing at Latitude is, quite incredible. And you going through this journey, surviving while companies with tons of funding aren't able to make it, and you have this approach to you that is keeping you alive, not just alive, but thriving, and with a lot
Yeah.
of cool things coming up very soon. I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future. Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for joining us, and I'd like to thank the audience as well and anyone listening to this recording.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Stan. And yeah, if there's any way people might want to reach out to you, what would be the best way to do that? Of course, you can always reach out to someone at Valerian. And I guess another last second question is if there's any value beyond just writing a check to you and having a network? What is that?
That have a very big value. No, I mean, we're always raising. That's the nature of
Sure.
highly capex intensive companies. We're always raising. I hope we're going to be closing soon. So if you're interested to fund the company for its first launch, be free to reach out. LinkedIn works, Stanislas Maxima or Latitude. And I think I can give my email there. It's very simple. It's stan@latitude.eu. So you can just send me an email. Send me an email. I'd be glad to interact. Of course, if you're an engineer, want to work with us, I would love to look at this. Partners or anything. Yeah, so we do a lot of things ourselves, but we have like 200 partners, industrial partners. So we're looking for more every time, every day. So yeah, I'd be happy. All of that can help us.
All right. Well, Sam, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you again. And thanks to everyone who joined this webinar and spending time with us today. Um, yeah, thanks again and take care.
Thanks a
And
lot.
we'll hope to speak to you again very soon.
Me too. Bye bye.
Take care.
Cheers.